Well, this is what the Cinnetic looks like with a half decent whiting on it. Plenty of those recently. We're going to give it a review today. It's a bit of an odd rod really, because it's not quite a beach caster and it's not quite a bass rod, but it might be absolutely perfect for some of this south coast fishing we do. So we're focusing in on this 3-piece continental style rod that's just that little bit lighter than all the others. It's a 13-foot rod, and as you can see there, the weave on that looks good, doesn't it? We'll see how it fishes in a minute. Starting off with some mono actually, because we want to bed that reel down, but I suppose we need to ask ourselves, why would you use a rod like this? Because it's not your standard 5-6 ounce beach caster. It is a continental rod, but it's just that little bit lighter than everything else, with the advantage of course being that you're going to feel those bites. How many times have you caught fish on the big heavy rods and not really recognised what's going on? So that's the real reason that I want this rod. Plus it's pretty simple to cast as well. You can see here that we're setting it up with the Sonic AVX again. I'm just using mono just to bed it in, but basically this will be a braid type rod. So you get a good idea of the thinness of the blank here. Look, that's next to a Daiwa Sandstorm, which is more of your traditional 12-foot rod. You can see the thickness of the blank. It's obviously a lot heavier. We put a multiplier on the Sandstorm, and then on that Cinnetic rod obviously we've got the Sonic AVX. Thickness all the way up, not even at the first rod ring of the Cinnetic. You can see the difference there. So obviously the rod on the left is rung for a multiplier. No great casting beast or anything, the Sandstorm, but I would say between them you still reach a similar sort of distance, even though you could put a 6 ounce on the rod on the left. And actually as you're doing that, we're getting very small twitches on that Cinnetic, aren't we? So alongside that, what now looks like a big fat Daiwa rod, you've got a few differences. So obviously the Continental rod's got the braid on it. That's 15-pound braid, ASSO braid 8 strand, and then this multiplier rod on the left hand side has got 18-pound line. So there are little differences that will affect the casting as well, and this is obviously mono from the multiplier on that rod. Fuji rod rings all round, of course. For this sort of price range, about £185 this rod. Certainly worth the money, but the quality of the fittings is excellent. You can see here, butt cap replaced. Just nice to have a really thin, slim beach caster that will still cast a fair enough distance. Now there are a few small little issues with this, one of which is it's kind of got like a maximum range. There's no power left in it. Previous favourite of mine was the Vertix Azores, and that always gave you the impression that there was a little bit more left in the power of the rod that I couldn't get out of it. Whereas something like this, I feel like I'm using all the power, and it's got a maximum range it just stops at. But that said, this is enough to get you fishing, and obviously with casting you can just do off the ground casts like this, overhead thumps, and it'll just flick a bait out over and over again. So it doesn't need winding up, of course, like bigger rods, distance casting rods would need. But you can actually hold it for a while like you would a bass rod in the surf. Quite nicely balanced. It goes in beautifully. I'm pushing that together, it's not going any further, so yeah. Some power in there. So we're having a look at it here in the studio. You can obviously see that sort of ridge of weave there that makes it look so good. 3 equal sections, a very thin tip of course, but exceptionally good whipping, pretty faultless on that side of things. The only thing is, of course, as we were saying, it is a very sensitive tip, and then you could be reeling in a fish and then you kind of lose any control over that tip, and you're already sort of 20 inches down the blank, and that's where you're playing the fish from. That would be my only slight criticism. To say, I'm no real expert with the beach casting rods, but that would be a first impression for someone like myself, I think. Another thing that you can see here, it's sort of light enough to, you know, fish with it under your arm. You don't have to put the butt into your sort of hip to winch a fish or anything like that. Okay, so we've only got a little white in there, but you can hold the rod. You find yourself feeling for the bites a little bit more, I think. First cast, anything could happen. And there you can have a look yourself. I mean, the reel seat, again, Fuji reel seat. Tried a couple of reels on this, the Surf Blaster and the Sonic on that, and obviously that just winches down perfectly well. Nice little finish there as well, that carbon look. Does sound like it's got a high content of carbon. Not that I really know exactly what these rods are made of, but it's just a bit of fun as well. I mean, sometimes we're so far away from the fish in terms of sensitivity. Yeah, such good fun just looking at the little rattles as well. You can really tell the difference between all the different small fish. And with the sort of fishing that we've got coming up, now we're coming into March, it's quite interesting as well. So I'd really like to see what this is like with some place. That will give the rod a really good rattle. Better than the rubbish whiting I've done recently. But we're also coming into thornback season, early spring, and I'd love to know how it handles a thornback. Look at that, prehistoric, beautiful look. So this is my little foray into beach fishing, and then obviously come the spring and summer we'll be back on the bass on the lures. But for someone like myself that obviously fishes a lot lighter, it's a great little rod to have. Here's something that it sounds silly, but I would recommend when you get in these bars, replacement bars. This is the Ian Gold's rod rest. It's excellent. I've had it for years, it's survived really well. But when you needed a replacement bar here, and I got one off eBay, and it's just not right. It's hard to explain. Like this isn't well machined. Just feels a little bit. Just feels that little bit cheap, really. So I don't know if anyone's manufacturing these, but it just wobbles and bounces around. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little bit fussy. But there you go. Always get the original Ian Gold's one if you can.